Hi, welcome to Make It Monday. I'm Jim with Amy Sews, and today I thought I would address a technique that I've been asked about the past week or so, and it deals with construction, and it's called a lap seam. And traditionally, what a lap seam is where you have two layers of fabric that overlap and then are top stitched together, which produces a very strong seam, sometimes in many cases stronger than a traditional seam, where it's the two fabrics sewn together that could tear open. These actually, by be stacked one on top of each other and then top stitch, produces a very strong seam, and in some cases fairly lightweight, except when you're working with fabrics that have a tendency of fraying, like a cotton fabric or twill, denim, where you want to have the edges folded over and then they're actually hooked together whenever it's created and then top stitch. It's a little tricky, so what I thought I'd do is I'll take you over to the overhead and show you how to do a traditional lap seam and then show you my shortcut that kind of made it a little simpler. So basically, the way a traditional lap seam would work, you would have your fabrics, and I'm using contrasting fabrics just so it shows up better. And you would take your fabric and fold it over about a ½ inch and press it in place. Take your second piece of fabric, again, fold it over ½ inch, press in place. And then what you want to do is hook the two together, which is kind of tricky sometimes, especially if you're working on, let's say, a pant leg, if you're doing a pair of jeans, doing a lap seam like that. So you want to actually tuck in the one seam allowance within the other one, fold it over and press. And then you would go to your sewing machine and selecting, let's say, an edge guide foot that you would lay on top and then sew right along the very edge, much like I did on this sample here. So you can see here where there is top stitching in blue, right along the fold of the seam. And then when you turn it over and you do the opposite side, that way you see the stitching on both sides on the top of the fabric. It produces a nice, secure seam. It's very strong. The only thing I noticed about it is besides it being a little tricky to line up all your edges, is that when you're working with it, you have a single layer of fabric on either side, but where the seam is, you actually have 4 layers of fabric. You have the top of the fabric, and then it's turned under seam allowance, and then the opposing seam allowance and its fabric. So there's actually 4 layers of fabric within here. So if you're working on, let's say, a pair of jeans, it could make it a little stiffer, possibly a little more uncomfortable to wear. And if you were making a banner or a flag or things like that, it may inhibit the movement of the material as it was waving in the breeze, let's say. And sometimes you may get like a slight puckering along that fabric, and part of it, I think, is due to the bulk too. Of course, this hasn't been pressed yet, but you get the idea. It works great. It's a very strong, secure seam. However, it is a little tricky for newbies and even experienced people. And it may not always be the simpler way. So to simplify it, what I did with this one was I have my fabric, the first piece, and I drew a line about a ½ inch in, like I would if I were going to fold it, but I don't fold and press it yet. I just have that stitched, just the line drawn, and that's it. I'll take my second piece. I do not fold and press like I did with the first one. I actually lay it on top of the fabric right along that drawn line that I have. And then I will take my edge guide foot, or maybe a 1/4 inch piecing foot, and I would sew a 1/4 inch seam right along that cut edge, sewing the two together, like I did with this piece here. So you can see my stitching line is right there along the edge of this fabric. So you see that's still loose, and this has not been pressed at all yet. So I'm just going to take the two together, sew them in with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Once that's done, I will then go to the ironing board and then turn this cut edge, the red, so its cut edge matches the white cut edge. So I'm only folding over a 1/4 inch, much like I did with this sample here. So you can see it's just folded over a 1/4 inch. It's not on top of the white. It's just butting next to it like that. So the two are butting together. And then while I'm still at the ironing board, I will press to set those stitches. Then I'll take the white fabric, fold it over, and press it firmly. And then I'll take it, flip it over so I can see where that exposed part of the lap seam is, pop on my edge guide foot, and sew right along the fold of the red fabric. and that will complete my lap seam. And this way, when you look at the edge, I have a single layer of fabric, and I actually have just 3 layers of fabric within the seam. And you can see here on this finished sample, you only have 1 line of stitching shown on this side. And here you have the 2 as they were sewn together. But it makes a really nice lightweight lap seam, less bulk. So there's more movement of the fabric, whether it's a pair of jeans that you were constructing, draperies, a banner, or even if you were making a flag. So this way, that's how I did the seams. And here's this way, they're not as bulky whenever you have the traditional, let's say, a French seam that you top stitch to do a fell flat seam, etc. So this lap seam technique makes it a little lighter and just as strong as the other ones too, and also a little quicker too once you get the hang of it. So I hope you liked the tip, and if you did, be sure to follow us every week here on Make It Monday at noon, and also on our YouTube channel. And of course, if you're in the area of Harmony, Pennsylvania, please be sure to stop by, get on our mail list at amysews.com. And if you like the tip and you like to follow me along, you can check out my schedule at thesewingexpo.com, as I'm one of the instructors for the Original Sewing Quilt Expo. And you can follow me along wherever I'm going in the country there. So that being said, thank you ever so much for stopping by and watching us today. Be sure to tell a friend. And always remember, the more you know, the more you sew.